criminal justice system, deputy district attorneys represent the people. The prosecutors you are about to see and the cases they try are real. Nothing has been reenacted.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that the defendant, that man over there, preyed upon Susan Libby. Susan Libby is a petite young teen. At the time that these crimes occurred, she was 12 years old. Susan Libby got to know the defendant because he handed out candy to children in the apartment complex. Now, on the morning of December the 17th of last year, Susan was alone. The defendant had Susan come into his apartment. Susan had never been inside the defendant's apartment before. Within a minute or two, he attacked her by grabbing her wrists and yanking her into his bedroom. Susan screamed for help, and the defendant reacted by telling her if she didn't stop doing it, he was going to break her neck. And Susan Libby did what she was told. She stopped screaming. He placed her on the bed, his bed. He tied her wrists behind her back. He took a piece of tape and placed it over Susan's mouth and pinched off her nose so that she could not breathe at all. She felt as if she was going to die. I am going to ask you to convict the defendant of the charges here of attempted murder, kidnapping, and of child abuse. Thank you.
Myself, do I want to really push it more as an attempt murder and the roommate came home and interrupted a homicide in the making, or, you know, do I want to say, well, why do you have little girls in your bedroom?
He wasn't going to give up anything as far as statements go.
I mean, it's like we weren't even there.
Very arrogant.
Okay, and while you were there, the roommate shows up.
He said Taitano told him to leave. He had someone there. He had a girl in there or a date. And I asked if he heard anything suspicious in there. And he says, oh, it sounded like a whining puppy or a whimpering child. It was a great statement. I told the roommate what we were there for, and he broke down and just absolutely sobbed and cried. He was almost blaming himself because he left when the girl was still in there.
Well, here's the deal on the roommate, just so you know, from the standpoint of what the problem with the roommate is right now is.
Here we go.
Okay, what they're going to try and do is say the roommate did it because the roommate has a prior conviction related to a child. He wanted to take the fifth and he didn't want to testify. But they want the roommate more than me. They want to be able to say, this guy, you know, over here is a bad dude, and he did the crime.
Right.
She knows that's not the person that committed the crime against her, at least that's what she says. She is still very emotional about what happened, and some of the things that she said, she doesn't remember saying, you know what I mean, that she said at the time.
And the more traumatic it is, the more we try to suppress.
The reason I had her come in today is because she hadn't seen her tape that she did at Children's Hospital for quite some time.
He was stronger than me and he forced me back to his room.
How did he do that?
He like pushed and pulled me and stuff while I was trying to get away.
Were you screaming?
Yeah.
Were you?
And then, like around his bathroom area, he said that if I screamed anymore, then he would break my neck.
What were you thinking?
That I thought that maybe he was going to kill me or something.
Very scary for you. How's your mom been dealing with it?
She hasn't really asked me about it because she doesn't want to upset me.
Yeah. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. I would have liked to meet her.
Yeah.
And where's George now? Don't know? Are you worried?
Yeah.
Mom's a nurse with the Navy.
Single mom?
Single because she's a widow.
Uh-huh.
Dad died of cancer a few years back.
Does he cop out to the cops at all?
Denies everything. They want to point the finger at the roommate. The defendant's living with a registered sex offender.
Right.
So then I went to talk to him in jail.
The roommate or
The roommate is now in custody. Went over there. Huh?
What's he in there for?
He's in there for a probation violation because he hadn't registered.
Sit off to the right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The doorbell rang, and 2 children were at the door. Susan was doing all the talking. I got the impression she wasn't even sure what had just happened.
In shock.
In shock.
Okay.
I said, which person? She says, well, the old man from number 35. And I said, are you sure it was the older man and not the younger man? Because she said he said something like, shut up or I'll kill you, which sounded out of character.
Okay, the only possible intent was the intent to kill her. You know, so, because, and we know that because there isn't anything, you know, there's no sexual acts. You know, he doesn't have a lot of porno and things, right? He doesn't have a history of sexual assaults, that kind of stuff. You know, the only thing we have that's even sexual related really is this underwear. And he's actually wearing women's underwear when he's interviewed by the police. Okay.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
great.
So, and he shows the detective during the interview.
I wear them.
So I'm trying to decide, should I stay away from that altogether and just focus on all these other things that point to an intent to kill, and that's all the emotive is, you know, is he has some strange desire to kill her, or do I go into this other this kind of sexual stuff that shows, you know, that he's kind of a wacko?
In the matter of People versus Taitano, I would note for the record the presence of both counsel and the defendant on behalf of the defense.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. George Taitano is 65 years old. He had lived in this same apartment complex since approximately 1992. During that period of time, there was never a problem in the complex. He had good neighbor relations, and in particular with his next-door neighbor, Winnie Causey. Winnie Causey becomes important because George Taitano is, in fact, at Winnie Causey's apartment when the police officers come over to the apartment to investigate the case. The first thing Winnie Causey said was that George was over the house for a couple of hours. A couple of hours would have put George's arrival at Winnie Causey's at approximately 10:35. When Susan Libby is asked what time she thinks she was in George Taitano's apartment, she says there's a clock radio there, and I remember that clock radio saying 10:40. Now, when the police officers talked to Susan, she described the person who did this as having a blue Hawaiian shirt on. When George was seen by the police officers at 12:35, he had a plaid shirt on, didn't have a blue Hawaiian shirt on. When the police officers went into the room and searched the room with George's permission, they didn't even find or impound any type of blue Hawaiian shirt. The evidence will also show that George Taitano had a roommate by the name of Keith Tudor. Keith Tudor also gave out candy to kids in the complex. That roommate had moved in with George approximately 1 to 2 months before the incident occurred. Susan Libby had met Mr. Tudor. So, ladies and gentlemen, after hearing all the evidence, I'm confident that you'll vote not guilty on all counts. Thank you.
Are you working tomorrow or tonight?
No.
No, okay. That's good, so you can get some rest.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay. Hang in there. It took a lot longer than we thought. We'll get you guys in, I don't know, hopefully.
Okay, good.
It'll be done, so.
Can you bring them in the morning tomorrow at 8:30? And we should be done for certain tomorrow. You'll be over and done with, and hopefully it will be before lunch, but I can't promise that.
right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Note for the record the presence of all 12 of our jurors, all of our alternate jurors, both counsel and the defendant.
He's gonna swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Come forward and take a seat at the witness stand. All right, Miss Libby, you seem to be a bit upset, right?
Yes.
What is it about what's going on that's got you kind of worried and upset?
I don't know.
Just take your time.
I'm just scared.
You know what you need to do? Is sit up in your chair. And I want you to take a really deep breath, okay? Really deep breath. Take another one. Okay. You know what? There isn't anybody, no matter how old they are, that when they sit in that chair, they don't feel a little bit nervous and worried, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Susan, do you know a person by the name of Jorge Taitano?
Yes.
And do you see that person here in court today?
Yes.
Could you point to him to describe what he's wearing?
He's wearing gray.
Okay. Susan, when you lived in the apartment complex with Jorge Taitano, did you ever go up to his apartment?
After Halloween, we did.
Okay. What happened at Halloween?
We got our candy, and then afterwards, we went back there a couple of times to get candy.
And did you go there with friends or did you go by yourself?
With friends.
Were you inside the apartment or where were you?
At the doorway.
Was he the one that gave you the candy?
Sometimes his roommate would.
Have you been over there since then?
No.
And why not?
I don't know. I'm just scared or something.
Here, let me get your Kleenex. You can take a minute, Susan. On the morning of December the 17th, did he call out to you? How did he get your attention?
He asked me about the receipt and the CD order.
Okay. Did you go inside his apartment?
Yes.
Were you afraid at that point?
No.
And why not?
Because he was always nice to me in the past.
Okay. And then did something happen?
Yes. He forced me back into the bedroom.
Did he say anything to you when he started to do that?
I started screaming, and then he said that if you don't stop screaming, I'll break your neck.
Were you afraid by what he said?
Yes.
Is that why you stopped screaming?
Yes.
What did he do?
He tied up my wrists and my ankles.
What were you doing when he was getting the rope off the floor?
I was thinking that maybe I could try to move, but I was scared.
So you just sat on the bed?
Yes.
And then what happened?
He got some red tape from the floor and he taped my mouth.
Were you able to breathe through your mouth at all?
A little bit.
Okay, but not much?
Right.
After he did that, what happened?
Then his roommate came in and he didn't want me to make any noise, so he put his hand over my mouth so I couldn't breathe.
Susan.
Let me interrupt just for a minute. Would you feel better if your mother was standing up here with you?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you come on up here, ma'am? You can stand up here next to the witness stand if you want to. You can hold your mom's hand if you want to do that, okay?
Susan, how long was the defendant pinching off your nose?
A couple of minutes.
Were you able to breathe at all?
No.
Did you ever feel like you were going to die?
Yes.
Were you thinking about anything in particular?
I was thinking about my family.
And what were you thinking about?
I was thinking about how I love them.
I have nothing further at this point.
We're going to take about 10 minutes, okay? That's where we are. We're going to take a few minutes.
Just remember, be strong. You look at Anne Marie, okay? All right.
Good afternoon, Susan. Susan, I just have to ask you a few questions, and this will be all over with. You testified that your nose was held for approximately 2 minutes.
Yes.
Susan, I think it would be fair to say that you were terrified when this was happening, correct?
Yes.
And you were shaking and nervous, and
Yes.
even afterwards you were terrified and shaking, and
Yes.
it's quite a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Now, do you recall talking to Officer Stanton the same day that this happened?
Yes.
Did you tell him that you think your nose was pinched for about 1 minute?
Yes.
But it seemed like an eternity, I'm sure.
Yes.
And did you see the roommate around the complex as well?
Yes.
And would the roommate say hi to you as well?
Sometimes.
And sometimes when you went over to the house to get candy, was just the roommate home and not George?
Yes.
And did the roommate give you candy more than one time?
Yes.
Would it be 3 or 4 times?
A couple.
A couple. Now, do you remember at the preliminary hearing, you testified that George's roommate had a weird laugh?
Yes.
What was weird about his laugh?
I don't know. It just sounded weird.
Did you have conversations with George's roommate?
No.
When did you hear his laugh?
Sometimes when he would give us candy.
He'd laugh when he'd give you candy?
Sometimes.
George's roommate, the 2 times that he gave candy to you, did he make any inappropriate comments to you at all?
No.
He did?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
He did not? Okay. All right, thank you, Susan.
That's it. It's all done. Oh, thank you. Got through it. All right, good girl. All right? Okay. It's just so hard to predict this case.
What's the case?
It's a kidnapping
Yeah.
of a girl, about 13. She's actually 12. She's 13 now.
Yeah. What happened?
No.
What happened?
He basically tricked her into coming to the apartment, and then he dragged her into another room and tied her up.
And how is he blaming his roommate?
Because his roommate lives there, and he's saying it wasn't me, it was the
Cover
roommate.
story.
A lot of times when people are accused of crimes, they try and point the finger at
Yeah,
other
but
people.
that doesn't make any sense because the girl knew what he looked like, so how would that...
I know. Well, that's what I'm going to argue to the jury. But you just never know. Did you eventually take some photographs of Jorge Taitano's apartment?
I did.
And showing you what's been marked previously as People's Exhibit 24. Do you recognize what's in photograph A?
I do.
And what's that?
Underneath the sheets there was a briefcase. Lying right next to the briefcase was a red piece of tape.
Did you find that tape, or did someone else find the tape?
I found the tape.
Did you ever handle the tape?
I did not.
I have nothing further at this point.
Were you there when Officer Stanton impounded that piece of tape and placed it in an evidence bag?
I was.
You see any hair on it?
I did.
You didn't take pictures of that hair?
Apparently I did not, no.
Well, aren't you trained to take photographs of important evidence?
It was going to be impounded. I didn't see the need.
How come you didn't take pictures of it?
I didn't.
Officer Stanton, what was Susan's demeanor like when you first contacted her?
She seemed very nervous and upset, and she looked as though she had been crying.
Did you notice any kind of injuries about her?
I noticed her wrists. She had thin red marks around her wrists, and I also noticed some red marks on her ankles.
Did anyone ever arrive at the residence other than a law enforcement personnel?
Mr. Taitano's roommate.
And what was his demeanor like when you told him why you were there?
Well, once he knew we weren't there for him, he seemed relieved.
Okay, and did he have any reaction to why you were there?
He cried.
Now, you said that when you talked to Mr. Tudor, he cried. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Is that because he's a 290 sex registered and hasn't registered?
I'm going to object to this as improper, Your Honor, and admonish counsel and instruct the jury.
The objection is sustained to the question, and ladies and gentlemen, just keep in mind that attorneys ask questions, and questions are not evidence. Go ahead, sir.
When you saw George Taitano, he was wearing a plaid shirt, isn't that correct?
Plaid shirt, blue jeans.
You didn't see a blue Hawaiian shirt in the bedroom, did you?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. I believe you testified that it was Officer Atwood that saw the piece of tape underneath the bed first?
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't see any hair on it when you picked it up and looked at it, did you?
I saw some fibrous things and things stuck to the glue.
There's nothing in your report about hair on that piece of red tape, is there, officer?
No, I didn't look to see if it was actually hair.
There's nothing in that report about fibrous material on that red tape, is there, officer?
Correct.
When she was tied, did you understand her to be hog-tied or tied with two different pieces of rope?
Two different pieces of rope.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
One around the legs and one around the hands.
Okay, all right.
And she was tied in the front.
Well, she said she was tied in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, she was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, this way.
right, right. So I just wanted to make sure, you're absolutely sure she wasn't hog-tied?
No.
You're not sure?
No, what I'm saying is I'm sure she was. She was not hog-tied. There's two pieces of rope. We found both pieces of rope.
No, the officers say they only found one.
Well, we got two pieces, and this we're not sure
Well,
about
where's the second piece?
It was on the floor.
Where on the floor? Because we don't have it.
We do. Okay, that's the one we think did the wrist.
Right.
That matched up.
Are they starting? No, okay.
No, there should be one more piece, I thought. I could be wrong.
And there was only one piece of rope found, correct?
In his bedroom, there was only one piece found. That's correct.
Now, do you recall testifying at the preliminary hearing that there were two strands of rope found inside Mr. Taitano's
I
bedroom?
do. Basically, it was my error. When he showed me a Polaroid picture, I saw it twice, and I assumed there was two, and that was my error. There was not two.
Now, do you recall testifying that there was rope also found in Mr. Taitano's trunk of his car?
It was actually in the pickup truck, yes.
You were wrong then?
Yes.
Remember testifying at the prelim that there was more rope found in the bedroom,
There was on the porch. It wasn't in the bedroom, and yes, I do remember that.
so you were mistaken about where that was found?
Yes.
Thank you.
They're anxious to get this behind them. The victim is, she's as sweet as apple pie.
How old is she?
She's 12, now 13, but a young 12. She's not some of the girls that we see that are a little bit more, mature.
It's just scary.
Yeah.
The thought that some little girl could just be grabbed.
But I think we all kind of have this fear that wow, we can't even leave our kids out in our own apartment complex,
And then this happens, and you just,
Yeah.
and you keep thinking.
Yeah. Right.
So do we have a name yet?
We're still looking at Amelia, but I know I like it too, but then I looked it up in a baby book and it means hardworking, and I thought, do I want to name my daughter hardworking?
I don't see many criminals named Amelia.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that comes to mind is the question of Mr. Tudor.
Yes.
You need to make a decision as to whether one or both of you are going to need him.
I don't intend to put Mr. Tudor on as a people's witness. If he's going to be a witness in this trial, it's going to be because the defense puts him on.
Well, I might not call him either, but it's unclear now as to exactly what he would testify to because he's not giving me straight answers.
He came and knocked on the door and initially just said hello, or what?
Yeah, he came over and said good morning. He was very friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really a friendly
He was
fellow.
friendly generally, is what you're saying. Okay.
He was here when the police picked him up. I was ready to go shopping, and he knocked on the door. And I said, I'm ready to go shopping. And I thought he would leave when I said that, but he just sat,
So it seemed like did it seem like your visit with him that day was longer?
Yes.
It was longer than
Yes,
usual? Okay.
yes.
So you kind of felt that day like you were waiting for him to leave and he wasn't leaving?
No.
Okay.
He kept looking out the door constantly.
So it seemed like he was very distracted.
I think he was a little bit nervous. I mean, now that I look back,
Was that from the very beginning that he was having
from the
coffee?
time he sat down to have coffee,
So it seemed
I can remember. And in a few minutes he said, well, there's the police out there. I wonder what they're out there for. And me, with my big mouth, I said, well, they aren't after me because I haven't done anything, And he didn't even laugh or anything.
Now, bringing your attention to the 17th of December, did you see Mr. Taitano that morning?
Yes.
And you recall telling Officer Atwood that Mr. Taitano came over for approximately 2 hours?
No.
You don't recall him?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
And what time did you see him?
Around 11 o'clock.
Did you look at a clock when he came over to your house?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Are you guesstimating, or the best of your recollection, it was around 11?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that a yes answer?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Causey.
Cross-examination.
Yes. Ms. Causey, how are you?
Fine.
That morning, you said that George just showed up.
Right.
You didn't invite him over?
No.
Didn't his demeanor seem nervous to you?
No.
You never thought it seemed nervous?
No, it didn't make me nervous.
No, not you. I'm saying him.
No, I didn't notice him being nervous.
Okay. Isn't it true that he seemed a little bit distracted that day?
Objection, Your Honor. That's been asked and answered 3 times.
Overruled.
I don't know.
Well, let me show you a copy of the transcript of our interview. 9 through 18. Has that given you an opportunity to refresh your memory as to our conversation?
It's an opportunity to say that our conversation was just normal, like we usually have.
You told me that he was nervous.
He was normal, just normal. We were just talking and joking and
Okay, so you didn't think he was nervous?
Not too nervous.
But he was
unusual.
A little bit nervous?
Yes.
Okay.
You said before direct examination that it seemed like any other day when he was over there.
Right. Yes.
Okay, it was pretty much regular George.
Yes.
It wasn't unusual for him to come to your house to have coffee uninvited?
Not unusual at all.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
I hope you understand. I wasn't out to get you at all. How are you?
I'm okay.
Good. Don't take offense to anything I said, okay? That's just the way it goes here.
I know.
All right?
I know.
All right. Take care of yourself. We'll let you know what happens, okay?
I hope so.
All righty. Bye-bye.
I would like to know what he was up to.
That's something we'll never know.
And then,
Only the defendant knows what he is up to.
well, I've asked every shrink I can find. I've been to classes and said, okay, what about this? What about this? And I throw the case at them. And I've gotten 16 different answers.
Really?
Please stand, sir. Raise your right hand. Be sworn.
Swear that the evidence that you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat at the witness stand.
Good afternoon, Mr. Taitano.
Good afternoon.
How old are you?
65 years old.
You married?
No, I'm divorced.
Do you have any children?
My daughter is 32. My son is 30.
Did you suffer a heart attack in March of this year?
Yes, I did.
Did you get triple bypass surgery?
I'm going to object to the relevance of this.
Sustained. It's irrelevant.
Now, at some point in time, did you have a roommate move in with you?
Yes, I did.
What was that roommate's name?
Keith Tudor.
How did you and Keith Tudor get along during
Not
that
too well.
month? Why?
We
I'm
had
going
a
to
big
object to the
fight.
relevance of this, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Now, had you ever talked to Susan Libby before December 17th of last year?
I never talked to her. I just gave her some candy. That's about it. Come by and have some candy.
Why would you give these kids candy?
I got leftover from Halloween from last year. You know, when they come over, I just give it to them.
When was the last time you saw Susan Libby before you saw her that Sunday morning?
That was the last time.
When did you see her before that?
Saturday, same weekend, the kids came by and asking for some candy.
And did your roommate, Mr. Tudor, give the kids candy too?
Yes, he did.
Had Susan Libby ever been inside your house that you know of?
Yes, sir.
When?
When she came by and started selling a magazine, CD for project in school or something like that. I said, I'll take the CD with Sanaya Train.
And where did this transaction take place?
Inside my apartment on a couch.
Now, you heard testimony about a piece of tape that was found underneath your bed. Had you ever seen that piece of red tape before that was found underneath your bed?
I had a tape around my finger which I kind of smashed it at work.
Where were you working at that point in time?
A construction company.
Did you recognize the rope?
Yes, sir.
What did you have that rope in there for?
I had a drafting board, and I had a lamp where you could extend it, you know, go move around a lot. And the clamp broke on the end, and used that rope to tie the clamp to the leg on my drawing board.
Did you ever use that rope to tie her up?
No, sir.
Did you ever use that piece of tape to place it over Susan Libby's mouth?
No, sir.
At any time, did you touch her on December 17th?
No, sir.
Do you have any idea why she would be accusing you of doing these things to her?
I really don't know.
Are you telling us the truth today, George?
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Cross-examination?
Yes. Mr. Taitano, you told the officer here that she came over to your house the Thursday prior to December the 17th.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Well, didn't you testify today that she came over on Saturday?
Well, she came over Thursday for some candy. I told her I don't have any. And I told her I was going to buy some and come by over the weekend. So she did. She came by Saturday, and I gave her some candy.
So you went out to buy more candy because Susan wanted it, right?
Well, not wanted it, but the rest of the kids kind of feel kind of disappointed.
She was disappointed, so you went out and bought candy for her, right?
Well, I feel kind of bad about it because I ran out.
But didn't you tell Detective Stallings that the only reason you had candy around was because it was left over from Halloween?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
You never showed the detective any kind of injury on your thumb, right?
I believe I did. I even put my thumb out when he was asking me the question about the tape.
So you're saying you did do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Didn't you tell the officer you used the yellow rope in order to hang pictures up?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. I hanged a picture in the living room with a big canvas picture. I hang that with the rope.
Well, you never mentioned anything about the fact that you had used the rope that day to fix the drafting board, did you?
Well, nobody asked me.
You had a lock on your bedroom door, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you wouldn't let anybody in your room, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Not even your roommate went in your room, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, he was, or is he?
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't allowed?
He wasn't allowed.
And when you'd leave the residence, you'd lock your room?
When I go to work, I usually lock it, yes. But if I go next door to Winnie, I usually just leave it open.
And a couple of times, the detective talked to you about the fact that Susan had been tied up. And you told him that if somebody was going to tie a little girl up like that, that meant he was going to rape her, didn't you?
Yes, I make that statement.
I have nothing further. This is the kind of stuff that kills defense attorneys. Remember how he said there was no Hawaiian shirt found? But look in the closet. To me, that's a Hawaiian shirt. Blue Hawaiian. Just like she said. So I just not going to mention that until the end. Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at Susan Libby. She's petite, she's quiet, she's not a streetwise kid. The defendant lulled her into believing she could trust him. He waited for just the right moment, and that moment arrived on December the 17th of last year. What did the police officers find in that room, in that apartment? Well, they find rope, just like Susan said. They find tape, just like Susan said. And what was hanging in the defendant's closet? A blue Hawaiian shirt, just like Susan said.
I have an objection. I'd like to go sidebar.
All right, approach the sidebar with the court reporter, please.
The blue Hawaiian shirt was there sitting in the defendant's closet, just like Susan said it would be. Everything about Susan's behavior and her injuries were consistent with what happened. What should you make of the defendant's testimony in this case? He's trying to cover his tracks, the tracks he used to prey on Susan Libby. And I am going to ask you to find the defendant guilty of the charges to put an end to the defendant's preying on Susan Libby. Thank you.
We know that the 911 call came in between 11:40 and 11:45. Susan testified that she came home, went to the office, and made a phone call. Giving 15 minutes for those events, we know that sometime between 11:25 and 11:30, this event ended for Susan Libby. Susan Libby said this event lasted 1 hour. Sometime between 10:30 and 11:30 in the morning. Winnie Causey told Detective Stallings that George was there for 1.5 hours. Even at 1.5 hours, folks, from 11 to 12:35, impossible for George Taitano to have committed this crime. We have the testimony of Officer Atwood. Now, he's the photo man. You saw the pictures that he took. Now, they knew at the time they were taking those pictures what the allegations were. And they knew if there was any hair on a piece of tape. It was very, very critical evidence. Can't see any hair on that piece of tape. Then we had Stanton come in. Stanton says, no, I didn't see any hair on the tape. I saw fibrous material. Fibrous material. Now, he either saw hair or he didn't see hair. Okay? Stallings, he doesn't look at any of the evidence. Doesn't see any hair on tape, doesn't see any tape, doesn't see any rope. You have to make sure these folks do the job, because if they don't do their job correctly, a guy like George Taitano, who's innocent of these crimes, goes to prison as a 65-year-old man. I mean, it's clear something happened to Susan Libby. Question is, did George do it? George is in this apartment complex for 9 years without a problem. His roommate moves in 1 month before, bada binga. I know several of you, if not all of you, have a reasonable doubt that George did this. It's not in him. There's no history. This case stinks. I smell a rat. And you guys heard the evidence, and I'm sure you do too. And you can't let these guys get away with it. So you have to come back not guilty in all these counts. Thank you.
I didn't say anything to Kevin, but hanging in the defendant's closet is a blue Hawaiian shirt. And I told Walt, I said, don't say anything. In closing, I pointed it out. He's, objection! They never established that that was a fair and accurate depiction. And she never asked anybody on the stand about whether or not that shirt was in the closet. And so the judge looks at him and she goes, well, you know, she did, you know, establish that the cop was a fair and accurate photo.
Absolutely.
You know? And so he was just so, I shocked the heck out of him. It was funny. It was pretty funny, right? I'd be so happy if they came back today. I can't wait. I hope I'm going to be able to call that family up today and give them a good present. I'd be amazed if they came back today. It will be tomorrow sometime. Hello, Sam Marie.
Did your jury come back?
No. That's why I want to cry.
Oh, no. Another long one.
How did you know? I was just going to pick up the phone and call you.
You're
right
kidding.
now. They have verdicts, and so we're going to do it at 1:30.
Okay, cool.
All right? Okay.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
All right, in the Taitano matter, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I've been informed that you have arrived at verdicts. Is that correct, Madam Foreperson?
Yes, it is.
Please hand the verdict forms to the bailiff. All right, please read the verdicts. Verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Jorge Tenorio Taitano, not guilty of the crime of attempted murder as charged in count 1 of the information. Victim, Susan L. Same title, court and cause, verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of kidnapping child under age of 14. Victim, Susan L. Same title, court and cause, verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of making a criminal threat. Same title, court and cause, verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of false imprisonment by violence, menace, fraud, deceit against Susan L. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, were these and are these your verdicts as read?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for your service. You're dismissed at this time.
He's got a sentencing date set for January the 14th of next year. Remember, I'm out on maternity leave, so you can reach me on my pager. Thanks, bye-bye.
When you get back, let's sit down and talk.
Okay, yeah.
We'll go over this.
Okay, sure.
Find out from your perspective what we need to do and what we did wrong.
Yeah, you did a lot of things right. Well, I don't want to criticize you because you guys did great. The bottom line is it came out the right results and justice is served.